are welcoming officially our panelists, Dan Perry, International Affairs Analyst, Mark Zell, the Chairman of Republicans Overseas Israel, and Professor Chaim Noy, the Chairman of Israel Communication Association. Is social media a useful tool to conduct diplomacy, or is it actually a liability?
Both. It depends on how it's used. It's like saying, is a microphone a liability or a benefit? You can do horrible things with a microphone, and you can also make yourself heard in ways that are useful. I think certainly we're not treating social media in the way that we should. The many things need to happen: algorithm, transparency, certain regulatory superstructures. But on the other hand, they're not purely utilities. You can't treat them like water or electricity because they have a public square function. And you can't prevent, diplomats from speaking on social media any more than you can prevent them going on TV. So even though, of course, when you have a character like Trump that can create liabilities, I think we have to just price that in.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, Mark, what do you have to say?
Well, I think I better even things up here. I think it's a benefit, and I think Donald Trump has really created a new world by making by having access to social media and expressing his opinions as he does. He's talking directly to the public, both at home and abroad. And that, I think, is a big plus, because conventional diplomacy carried out in the back room has proven to be, well, less than satisfactory. On the other hand, using social media, and as one who participates in it regularly, I think requires a kind of discipline by posters or state leaders, as well as the public that's consuming this stuff. What I'm not open to is regulation. Somebody, I think one of my colleagues here, suggested that it needs a more of a aggressive regulatory role. I think that would be a mistake. I think I would rely on the public and the leadership to exercise discipline and discernment in making use of this new medium.
Chaim, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I was thinking that's what I usually teach my students when we talk about social network sites. I would say this, sometimes I say, let's say I open this new highway. It's a new highway. It's very cheap. It's free. It's great. It's wonderful, but it's not regulated. It's not regulated, So if you want to drink and drive, you can do it. You got to be responsible. There's no police, right? I have this new airline, international flights, very cheap. Everyone is using it, but it's not regulated. It's legal, but it's not regulated. You have to be responsible, because, sometimes people use smoke and you put on fire on the plane. No one of us here on the panel would put anyone dear to him on such a plane or on such a highway. And this is what such social network sites are. So I wouldn't roll the responsibility for the users. There's always responsibility for everyone, but it has to be heavily regulated, as all infrastructures are.
I'd like to weigh in on this. Of course, right-wing voices are always going to say that nothing should be regulated because you need freedom of speech. And the obvious answer to that is you don't have the right to shout fire in a crowded theater. I fully agree that it's delicate and you can't just censor stuff you don't like. But these platforms are a little bit disingenuous when they speak of being just, platforms and not publishers. They're not just effectively publishers. They are themselves gatekeepers now by virtue of a series of monopolies in various niches of social media, and you can define them in different ways. You have some monopolies or some oligopolies, and in many cases, the different platforms are owned by the same huge company. And you can't just let these people who are approaching trillionaire status decide who's going to hear what, because it's not just a question of what's popular. It's not just a question of what lies are allowed to go up there without the slightest flagging and end up convincing people of total nonsense that could be toxic. But it's that they specifically have algorithms that tap into our darkest demons. Their algorithms promote hatred, extremism, radicalism, and lies, because it's more profitable, because people are drawn to those things. And so what you really have here is a complex situation where you're dealing with human nature, and not all of it is necessarily so benign. And do you really let these people tap into our darkest demons because trillionaires want to be quadrillionaires? That's what we're talking about. The highway analogy is correct. The airline analogy is correct. How about a hot dog? Would we allow people to sell human meat on the street and hot dogs? Because it's more profitable. We're allowing these platforms to completely make us crazy because it's a bit more profitable for a tiny handful of people who are so rich that I strongly suspect that the overwhelming majority of the people in the world would call it disgustingly rich.
This is something that we need to avoid, like the plague, government coming in and trying to regulate. When they've done it, even in these areas where you talked about airlines, hot dogs, and highways, they've often made big mistakes. And here we're talking about something much more fundamental: the right of ideas, the right to speak. And
so, Mark, let me ask you this: if it turned out that it was profitable for Elon Musk to promote agitation against, anyone named Mark, and they were making a fortune with this, and it was nothing but incitement to violence and anger and hatred, you would be against any effort to stand in the way of such a thing. Yeah, because that's undemocratic.
No, well, you posed the hypothetical, and I'm telling you, I'm not concerned about that. First of all, I'm an active participant on X. My views are not universally accepted, and I've been condemned and attacked by many people who don't agree with me. I accept that, and I accept the challenge. Okay, but what I don't accept is your idea that this is some kind of an economic enterprise which is going to be catering to these demons, as you talked about, and bringing out the worst in human nature. I believe.
Have you not been paying attention, Mark? That's precisely what's happening. You must have noticed what has happened to extremism in the past 15 to 20 years of social media around the world. You must have noticed. We're talking about a small handful of supremely wealthy people trying to get more wealthy by vehiculating lies and hatred specifically and explicitly, and refusing algorithm transparency, refusing to have any manner of an ombudsman that you can go to. If you have a complaint about Facebook, let's say kicking you off because you were too right-wing or something, there really is no one to talk to. They do what they want. And that is craziness considering the amount of impact that they obviously have. And it's not, Mark, I'll let you finish. It's not just political. It's also psychological. You see what the dopamine hit and the functionality that they've created are doing to young people who are becoming obsessed with their appearance. Now, they always were obsessed to a degree, of course. It's making it into a life-threatening danger. And without going to the extreme of censorship of particular political positions, you can say that we have a major issue here that needs to be addressed cautiously, carefully, in ways that are not anti-democratic. Maybe we need to have a voluntary ombudsman. Maybe we need to have some kind of voluntary agreement to adhere to certain standards. And maybe things that are dangerous, insightful lies might be flagged. For example, Trump is convinced a good part of the American public that the election in 2020 was stolen based on falsehoods. Whatever you may think of that election.
I agree with him, by the way.
Clearly.
He's absolutely correct.
Mark, in Israel, Netanyahu has convinced about a quarter of the public that the Shin Bet did October 7th with Hamas. And this is based on lies and incitement and agitation that are done on social media.
Who are you to determine? This is exactly what happened in the Biden administration. They set up this whole agency within the Department of Homeland Security to do exactly what you guys are talking about, to determine what's true and not true, and information and disinformation.
How about not censoring it, but merely not amplifying it because it's profitable? Would you agree with that?
Who makes that decision?
We have to go to commercial break. Thank all of you for being there and taking part in this very important debate.